And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host and author, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome tonight journalist turned true crime author turned thriller author, Katrina Rother, who's here to give us the inside scoop on her brand new book out today. That is Hooked. Katrina, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about this book.
Well, this is a long time to get published book, so it's changed and evolved many times, but it's a new series, the Katrina and Goode series. This is the launch. And it's a surfing homicide detective named Ken Goode and an investigative reporter named Katrina Chopin. They meet at a bar at a restaurant in La Jolla, which is my favorite restaurant. And they basically bond immediately over some past traumas in their lives. But before he's able to find out that she's a reporter and that they can't date because he wants to ask her out, he gets called away on a suspicious death call. So he leaves. Next time he sees her is the next morning at a news conference with her little notepad. And he goes, "You're a reporter?" And so they basically are attracted to each other immediately, and then they can't date. So then they're in competition as they both investigate these two suspicious deaths. That's essentially the start. It's a very complicated plot.
Well, we are excited to chat all about it and get the inside scoop. So first, I just want to welcome everyone because we are broadcasting live to 8 different destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So hey, mystery and thriller loving friends, no matter where you're watching from, you're in the right place. It is the right time. It is Mystery Monday. And because Mondays can be murder, we are going to make it a little less painful and get your week off to a killer start. So if you've been with me before, you know the drill. And if you're new, welcome new friends. Here's the drill. Every Monday, I give you my handpicked featured authors and you get to ask them anything. So ask Katrina about this book, these characters, her writing process, anything that you are wondering about, get it going in the chat and I will pop it right over to Katrina. Chris is joining us from YouTube. She says, hello from Cincinnati. I am excited to hear Katrina talk about her new book. It sounds sassy. Katrina, is it sassy?
Sassy. Well, that's a good word. I like that word, but I don't know if I would call it sassy. My detective is sarcastic, and there's quite a bit of banter between he and the reporter. They're both smart. They're both very well read. They're both athletic. They're both, good looking. They're both really smart. So this is a detective who reads the New York Times and Albert Camus. So it's pretty unusual from the cops that I've met.
I think maybe what Chris meant is that electrifying chemistry you were talking about between the two leads. Tell us about why you wanted to interweave this sizzling attraction between the two, who then cannot date.
Well, I think there's something about ethics that's really important to about this book. This is an homage to old school journalism. It's set in 2015 when we still had newsrooms, when we still had reporters covering news and doing it with integrity and wanting to tell the truth. Things are so different now with the misinformation and the disinformation and the partisan politics that goes into quote unquote journalism, which isn't really journalism. So it's coming from that standpoint. And when we trusted the police, trusted the police to protect us and take care of us. So I wanted to take those two pieces of what we used to have in our life that we used to love and protect and, protect our democracy and go back to that time when we still had that. And maybe people will look back and, say, wow, nostalgia. I wish it was like that still. Many of us, retired reformed journalists, we miss the newsroom. So there's a lot of the newsroom in this book. So you're right there in the middle of where these journalists are yelling at each other. There's glass walls where the editors sit. You can see them talking to each other, throwing chairs at each other or whatever. So it's an important dynamic also that the police and the media have never really gotten along, and they're always at odds, and they're in competition. They're still trying to solve the same case, but they aren't allowed to share information, and they're not allowed to date. So that's the perfect tension and perfect conflict for two main characters, to have to fight the whole book.
Well, I
When
am
they want to not be fighting, when they would rather be, naked. So
woo. I think that's what Chris meant by sexy.
sassy.
She's
Okay.
just sassy.
Okay,
Exactly.
good.
One of my favorite words, and also my nickname. So Chris is
Oh, okay.
saying, because I am sassy. Chris is saying, yes, that is what I
Okay,
meant.
good.
So awesome. And also saying, I love the setup. I know the setup is so fun because of that inherent tension. Randy is joining us from YouTube. Hi, Randy. He
Hi,
says, hi,
Randy.
hi, Sarah and Caitlin. Sharon also joining us from YouTube saying hi. Hey, Sharon. So good to see you. John is joining us from Facebook from Northeast Ohio. Hi, John. Good to see you.
This is great.
Robin is joining us from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Welcome, Robin. So good to have you. And I want to jump into keep the questions coming, but I want to jump into some of the questions that were submitted in advance. This one is from Kelly. She says, Caitlin, you spent years as a journalist chasing facts. What truth or truths were you most interested in exploring through your fiction and hooked that journalism couldn't quite capture? Great question, Kelly.
Well, this series is based on my personal experience, my professional experience. I was an investigative reporter covering government and politics for many years for newspapers, daily newspapers. And I wasn't really a police reporter. But this book is really about corruption as well. So this series, it will get more and more into the nitty gritty of all this. But I did cover a lot of corruption, wrongdoing, negligence as a government and politics reporter for newspapers. And so I wanted to weave a lot of that in. So even though this is fiction, it's based on things that I covered. People, they're compilation characters of there's nobody real in this story because I didn't want to get sued. But so much of this comes from all these years of working in newspapers. And then all the years I spent writing books about homicide cases too. And all the experiences I had with staged scenes. So staged as a murder, murder staged as a suicide, staged as maybe a murder, maybe a suicide, we can't tell, all kinds of stuff like that. So from experience in both books and my newspaper career.
Ooh, wait, staged scenes. What is that, Caitlin? And how many times did you run into that? Are you saying
This
that
is the sequel too. So it keeps going as part of the series that there's more of this. So stage scene. So basically there are two suspicious deaths that happen at the beginning, and he gets called out when he's at Piatti and he's ready to have his martini and mussels, but he can't because he's got to go. Gets her number, writes it on a napkin, takes off. He gets to this scene. It's a wealthy mansion. These two people are there. He's not sure if this is an older man and a younger woman. It turns out they're father and daughter, and they are two biotech execs who are basically developing a sexual enhancement drug. And there are a lot of rich people who are in La Jolla and members of the La Jolla Beach and Tennis Club, the high mucky mucks and elites who have all this money. They are counting on this drug to not only make them a lot of money, but they can't wait till it's released so that they can go out and start taking the drug themselves. So anyway, when he gets to this scene, though, the forensics are all weird. Like something's wrong. Like this just doesn't add up. So I don't want to give anything away, but they don't know if it's a double suicide, a double murder, a murder suicide, or what, because nothing really makes sense. There's stuff that's just in the wrong place and things just don't add up.
So, Caitlin, you said that in your work as a journalist, you came across some staged scenes. Tell us about that. You show up at the scene to cover an unfolding investigation, and it appears to you and or the police that it has been staged. What was that like?
This is a theme that kind of came up in several of my true crime books, in real stories, in real cases. So I'll just start with the first one. The Kristen Rossum case, I don't know if you're familiar with that one. She was a county toxicologist here in San Diego County. And she called 911. She said, my husband's not breathing. And so the 911 operator said, well, put him on the floor. So she says, oh, okay. So she basically had already created a staged scene with red rose petals over his body, a little picture of them together, their wedding picture by his head. She had to recreate the scene on the floor because the dispatcher told her to do that. So she took the red rose petals and she pushed them across the white sheet, which left these little streaks from the rose petals. She didn't think of that. So she ends up putting him on the floor, and then the dispatcher says, okay, let's do, CPR. So she starts counting, right? Well, she's got this cordless phone. In those days, those were big phones, right? So when the paramedics get there and she's in the living room holding the phone, counting, her husband's body is in the bedroom. So she's pretending to count.
Oh my God.
And as it turned out, the prosecutor was a former paramedic. So he knew right away that something was wrong. But then there were these other, elements. Well, okay, now the wedding picture was posted next to his head on the floor, and there were these red streaks on the bed sheet, So anyway, right away, she had to recreate the scene, last minute. And so it didn't work.
Well, it's tough when you have to move a body, Caitlin. I mean,
right.
We need to be a little more empathetic to that murderess. I mean, come on. Sharon is saying sassy Sarah Teehee. Well, you're sassy Sharon. I got to meet Sharon last year when I hosted Lisa Unger at an Unlikely Story. So it was so fun to meet a maven in person after all these years. And Sharon, so good to see you pop up virtually as well. Okay, let's get back to some of these questions. First, I want to say that the book just came out today. It is brand spanking new, and you can order from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. That is, of course, Murder by the Book. So wherever you're watching from, YouTube or Facebook, here is that link where you can get your mitts on Hooked out today. Great question, Robin. She says, based on her experience, who does she think will be the first fired in the current inner circle? Ooh, wait a minute. This is a great question. I didn't even think that, Robin. We're talking to an actual political journalist. Is it going to be Pam, Christy, Cash, Stephen? I mean, the list is so long and so juicy. Who do you think it's going to be?
Well, who do I think it's going to be, or who it should be is the question.
Ooh,
I think they should.
Two different
well,
people?
I think they're all just so corrupt. I don't even know where to start. But what it looks like from the pressure is Kristi Noem. I would say she would be the first to go. But, so what Trump generally does is he's like, oh, no, I'm not firing that person. They're doing a great job. And then if the pressure keeps going, then he goes, well, okay.
Right. He's like, oh, that person is corrupt. That person had to go. Renee, thank you for letting me know that this live stream is not working on Murder by the Book. I know I'm getting a fail notice from Facebook. Facebook is having an issue. I have tried 3 times on the back end live to change it and to update it. I tried restarting it. It's not working. So thank you. You're right. But we are still live on the other 7 destinations. And thank you for finding your way here to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. I see you and I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And thank you.
That was a hard question, by the way.
That was a hard question.
I wasn't ready for that one.
See how it feels to be in the hot seat when someone's asking you the tough questions, Caitlin. Good job, Robin. Renee is saying happy pub day. Yes, happy pub day, Caitlin. Okay, second question. This one, this is so fun, from John. What was the moment or question that first hooked you into writing this book, and how did that idea evolve as your story took shape? So fun.
Okay, so Ken Goode, who is this surfing homicide detective, he has been in my brain for 35 years. I wrote another book called Naked Addiction. It was my first novel that was ever published. It's the first book I ever wrote. It turned out to be the 4th book I ever got published. So this book, Hooked, is actually book number 16. It took me 17 years to get published. I originally intended it to be a series with Ken Goode, which it is, but it's now a new series because it includes this investigative reporter. So Naked Addiction is the prequel to this book because it took 17 years to get Naked Addiction published and it took another 17 years to get this book published. So if you ask me what my book originally was 17 years ago when I first wrote it, I couldn't even tell you because I have rewritten it so many times and I've been through, 5 different agents since then. It's always been, though, the same idea that I had of these 2 characters playing off each other. So that has never changed. When we came up with Hooked, it actually was not the original title that I wanted to call it. I wanted to call it Dopamine Flood, because to me, this is all about dopamine. This sexual enhancement drug is built on dopamine receptors. It's a made-up drug, but it basically would keep you perpetually infatuated and attracted to your partner. So it was designed theoretically to keep these long-term relationships together. But in fact, both the men and the women were secretly hoping to go run out and find themselves a younger model, right? But that's where the Hooked comes in, is the dopamine. And I think we're all familiar now with dopamine addiction, since all we can ever do is hold on to this phone. And that's exactly what it is. It's addiction, and it's all about dopamine. So that was what it was originally called. They didn't like that. They didn't like the connotations, I guess. So we came up with Hooked because I wanted people to get that same idea, but, and then get them hooked on the series. And it seems like it's working.
It seems like it's working indeed. And I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
Caitlin, what have you learned from writing 16 books? And by the way, congratulations on that.
You.
And if it's different, what, if anything, did you also learn from working 17 years to get that first one published?
Well, the first one I got published, and I'm really grateful to Michael Connolly. He read it and he helped me. He gave me a critique and helped me fix it to get it published. Because when he read it, I did not have a contract. I took a chance. He goes, "Well, aren't you working on a novel?" And I said, "Yeah, I am," because I asked him to give me a blurb on that Kristen Rossum case book. He goes, "So I'd rather give it to you on a novel, but maybe this will help you get published." So he gave me some ideas about what was wrong. And essentially, I did not know my police procedures well enough because I had not written any true crime books yet. And I did not cover cops as a beat. I was a government reporter and a politics reporter. So it took me many, many years of knocking my head against the wall and then writing like a dozen true crime books where I followed a homicide case from beginning to end. I interviewed detectives. I got to know detectives. So now I know how detectives think, how they talk to each other, what their protocols are, how they handle evidence and in what order. And I know how they talk to suspects. I didn't know any of that when I started out. So my advice to people is, I know it's fiction, but you still need to know your material. And I tried to do it without knowing my material. So what Michael Connolly said was, you're really good at character, and that's not something you can learn. That's something you have innately. And so that's how he gave me that blurb that I'm so happy with, basically that I know how to do character. But in all those years, I had to pick up all that other knowledge. And that's what I've done. So learn your craft, learn your material, and then maybe you can finally get published. So this is my dream that I originally had all those years ago. I'm finally getting a second chance at it after 15 books. So it's not easy. You got to hang in there and you got to rewrite over and over and over, over and over and over and over and over.
Oh, perfect. And Caitlin, your hair is just brushing a little bit against the microphone. If you could just yes, perfect. Thank you so much. It's just giving us a little clicky, scratchy sounds. Robin says, Caitlin is a new to me author, but I will certainly follow her from now and check her out. Excellent, Robin. Because I'm so glad you said that, because Robin, we are almost 6 years into the series. Can you believe it? Because here it is January. I started this in the spring of 2020 when everybody's events were canceled. And my goal in this series is to connect readers to their favorite writers and introduce them to their new favorites. So I'm so excited that I could connect you with a new writer. This is so great. Renee wants to know, did your first written book get published? So the one that took you 17 years to get published.
Yes, I'm an incredibly determined and stubborn, maybe a little crazy person. That Naked Addiction, the one I said took me 17 years to get published, most people would have put it in a drawer and started like 5 new ones. I just stubbornly kept rewriting it. And the other piece of advice that I would give people is, don't keep working on your same chapter over and over and keep rewriting it, or your first 100 pages. That was what I did. And it was wrong. And it was stupid, because what I ended up doing is, guess what? I added a brand new first chapter because I was starting in the wrong place and I didn't know it. So what I do now is I sit down and I write the whole thing all the way through.
Ooh.
I do a first draft, until my arms hurt. So I wrote 7,000 words yesterday. Of course, I'm not going to keep them in exactly that shape, but I'm up to 84,000 words on my next work in progress novel, new character, hopefully a new series. While my editor decides whether she's going to continue this other series. I can't just sit here. So I've started a new novel, and I've written almost the whole thing in 2 months. Now, so there's no more 17 years thing. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not playing at that anymore. I don't have time for that. I'm getting old here. So
let's watch it with the old talk there, lady, because I think we're kind of the same age. So we're going to need you to lock that down.
I'm not old yet. I'm not old yet, or I wouldn't be able to do that. But
oh my God. Renee, okay, Renee, you're back. Good. Thank you. So good to see you. You can be any place you want, my love. Chris is saying, Sara, you are absolutely the best at connecting readers to new authors, and your love of writing and reading and your immeasurable enthusiasm is so incredibly endearing. Oh my God, Chris, I love you. And I will Venmo you that $5 later for every I'm just kidding. Thank you so very, very much, because I don't get paid for this, you guys. I donate my time. I volunteer my time in service of my fellow authors and my beloved readers. And this is an active service, and I love doing it, but it is a lot of time and it's a lot of money. I pay for all of these services, streaming services myself, and I am so happy to do it. And when people tell me that, it means the world. So Chris, thank you so, so very much.
I'm very happy that you do it. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're so happy to have you. Jamie is joining us from YouTube as well. She says, hello from Lodi, California. Naked Addiction is excellent. A wonderful introduction to good or goody.
Good.
Good. I highly recommend reading it before hooked because it provides insights into the character. Caitlin.
Thank you, Janie. That's so nice. I've known Janie for a long time. She's a book reviewer also. So.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like there's some Easter eggs in Hooked for your OG fans. Is this true?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's Ken Goode's backstory. I mean, there's a lot in there, but he was 6 years old. The book opens where he's basically paying a tribute to his mother. It's the Coronado Bridge. If you've been across there, there's no place.
Oh my God, I have been across there.
There are people who jump off that thing pretty regularly, actually, unfortunately. So anyway, his mother, when he was only 6 years old, took him on a drive. She pulled over to the side of that bridge, and she put her high heels on the driver's seat. She gave him a little melancholy smile, and then she went behind the car and basically jumped over the railing while he was sitting in the car with the engine running.
No.
So he's 6 years old, and that obviously was very traumatic for him. And a police officer came to him and said, "Where are your parents, son?" And, he's waiting for his mom to come back. He didn't know where she went. And so that's how it starts out. And there is a theme of suicide throughout this series. So when Ken Goode goes to this scene, and like I said, he's not sure, is it a double suicide? Is it a double murder? There's also a theme of addiction. So like I said, it was originally going to be a series starting with Naked Addiction, but there was just too much time passed. So it's now a new series, and it still has those underlying same issues. And many of the characters met each other because they were in a rehab program together, and their parents were in a family support group as part of the rehab program. And that's from my own personal experience with my late husband, who killed himself, who was an alcoholic. And I went through treatment with him and went to these same groups. So I put that stuff into my book because it's pretty powerful, on how that can really affect people's lives. And that's how they bond, because Ken Goode and Katrina Chopin bond at the beginning of the book, because her brother was one of those people who was in the treatment group with the victim that is found dead in the opening scene. And anyway, I don't want to give away too much, but yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your very personal experience with us, both on the page and on the screen. I think it's, important that we start talking about these things. So thank you. And we have Chris giving us so much love. Thank you, Chris. Renee, saying thank you, Sara. Thank you, Renee. Robin saying, I will always remember Bob Dugoni telling me in person how much he enjoys Sara. And I think if I remember, that was a Maven's challenge to get your book signed in person. And he signed it to me by mistake, Robin, if memory serves. Oh my goodness. Robin adds, oh no, how horrible for that young boy. How horrible for any family member at any age. I know that is, I just want to hug that little baby, that little 6-year-old. Renee saying, thank you for sharing your personal experience, Caitlin. Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
That's really, really hard.
I wouldn't be able to talk about it if there hadn't been so much time passing. I wrote a memoir about my personal experience. It's only 58 pages. It's called Secrets, Lies, and Shoelaces. And it took me 19 years to write this little tiny thin book because I had so much emotion to work through and process before I could put it into a readable form. And it also has, addiction has cropped up in a number, and suicide have also been aspects and themes of my true crime books as well. So it's just, these are sort of the things I am drawn to because of my personal experience and professional too. I mean, like some of these books are based on, I have to learn even more about the people who had it happen to them. And then I write books about them as well.
I want to talk about some of the praise that the book has earned. First, from Audrey J. Cole, USA Today bestselling author of Missing in Flight. She says, Rother delivers a gripping, expertly woven crime thriller from the first page, hooked as a tense, multifaceted plot filled with murder secrets and a brilliantly plotted cover-up that keeps the pages flying. So as a journalist turned true crime author turned thriller author, you're having written in 3 different different media and across 3 different, segment to genres. Caitlin, what have you learned about the craft of writing? Are you indeed a plot? Are you plotting intricately, or are you said you just sit down and write until the first draft is done? Are you more of a just find your way pantser type, or what is your practice?
Well, I learned the hard way. Like I said, when I kept rewriting the same thing over and over again with Naked Addiction, I did not plot that book. And that was a mistake. What I learned by writing all those true crime books and all my narrative nonfiction books, it really helps me to outline what is the story. So with a true crime book, you know what the story is. Although when I do my research, I still learn a lot more and I still end up going in all these different directions. So that's why, even though you know what's going to kind of happen in the end, I always put suspense even in my nonfiction books because you want them to keep reading. I write my nonfiction books like novels because I want them to keep turning the pages and keeping the pacing going. So I basically do the same thing in fiction because narrative nonfiction and fiction, you're using the same storytelling techniques. But what I like to do with my characters, even if they're made up, is keep them believable and real. I have read a number of crime books lately because I've been really studying the genre and wanting to improve my skills. And I'm finding even some really big best-selling authors are writing characters that I just don't believe are real, and they sometimes seem cartoonish. I don't ever want somebody to pick up my book and say, these characters don't seem real to me. I want them to be 3-dimensional. That means victims have things that are embarrassing and they're flawed. They're not perfect people. And then the bad guys, quote unquote, love their mother and they have good intentions, or so they think they do. And so you may see them one way. By the time you get to the end of the book, you'll say, maybe they're not as bad as I thought, because nobody's black and white. And that's how I create my characters. I want them to be 3-dimensional with flaws, whether they're victims or killers. And that's the truth. That's my telling the truth for me.
I think that's so true because I learned when I was researching my true crime how messy criminals are and how messy victims are and how messy perpetrators are, because we're all messy and they're all humans. And so it's like nobody, it's like before I take a trip, I always, straighten up my house and do all my laundry because I think, oh my God, what if I die in a plane crash and someone comes in and is like, look at this slob, so let me get it nice and neat. So in case I die and no one will know what a slob I secretly am. But it's like those victims weren't planning to die. So, their houses and their lives are maybe unkempt or messy, or they had a fight with someone, their bills are unpaid, they're delinquent on something, they never resolved an fight with their mom or their boyfriend or whatever. And it's so true that real life is, of course, messy, but we don't think about it like that. And we're so quick to judge, an imperfect victim, and
Right.
when she
So,
comes forward with an allegation or when she is dead. And it's just
right.
interesting.
Yeah. So I think that victims sometimes also, I mean, nobody deserves to be murdered,
Of
first of all.
course.
But there are sometimes people make poor choices that maybe they wouldn't have been murdered if they hadn't done X, Y, and Z. So I also point that out because I feel like there's something to be learned from that. And by the same token, I don't feel like every person who kills is evil. A lot of times they're not evil, they're mentally ill. And I don't equate those two things. I don't think that who's mentally ill is an evil person. And that's not to say that, there are some serial killers out there who, I mean, I wrote a book about Wayne Adam Ford. It's called Body Parts. He was the most troubled, dysfunctional, messed up guy. He had a really bad head injury. And, there's a lot of people on death row who have head injuries because it changes their personality. There could be so many other things at play, and abuse when they're younger. And so it's not to excuse what they did, it's to understand what they did. And so I try to bring all of that into my fiction as well.
Mm. Well, we are out of time. Time flies when you're having fun. So I just put the rest of Caitlin's amazing reviews and blurbs in the chat so that everyone can peruse them at their leisure, because we didn't get a chance to get to all of them. But I just want to thank everybody for spending their Monday evening with me. I hope your week is off to a killer start. May the days and the pages fly by. Renee saying, Caitlin and Sarah, thank you for this wonderful event. Thank you for spending a Monday night with us. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. And Hooked is out today. And here again is the link to order, from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. That is, of course, Murder by the Book. All right, y'all, that's a wrap from us. May your days and your pages fly by. Stay warm, stay well, and I will see you next Monday. Take good care.